To prove that Donald Trump is a very mean person and to prove that journalists are totally compassionate and loving, CNN has aired a sympathetic interview with a member of a Mexican drug cartel. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, Klavan, you marvelous merchant of magical mirth. Only you could invent a scenario in which a left-wing news outlet sinks so deeply into the bubbling tar pit of its own twisted political hatred that the lunatic idea of legitimizing a death-mongering gangster could wend its way through every level of internal decision-making without one voice of even semi-decency speaking up to say, wait, we can't allow our childish demonization of our political opponents to twist our souls into gnarled, burnt offerings fit only for the altars of hell so that we actually call evil good and good evil right there on cable TV in front of our 6 or 7 viewers. But no, my friends, I am not making this up. CNN girl reporter Shapely Nudnik actually traveled to a Mexican hideout where she spoke sympathetically with a masked member of the Sinaloa drug cartel, whose former boss, El Chapo, was said to be personally responsible for the deaths of over 34,000 people. Miss Nudnik, winner of this year's Pulitzer Prize for Most Attractive Backside, fetchingly leaned forward and asked the masked gangster, quote, and as God is my witness, I am not making this quote up, according to the Trump administration, you are a terrorist. What do you make of that? Unbelievable, unquote. The masked member of the murderous cartel responded, quote, I don't like to get overly emotional because my job depends on inspiring terror in anyone who tries to stand in my way. But I must be honest and tell you this slur from your President Trump hurt my feelings very deeply. I'm just a man trying to make a living in this crazy world. And when I heard I had been labeled a terrorist, my hands were literally shaking so hard I could barely shove a screwdriver into the face of one of my rivals. I respect President Trump, and respect is very important because people who don't return my respect are often found inside plastic bags in several different locations. But a man must eat, and to be fair, our customers are mostly in the United States. And as any good businessman will tell you, you have to go where the customers are and then slowly poison them to death. I hope the American people will push back against this insult, and if they don't, I know where they live, unquote. CNN has proudly announced that this interview is only the first in a new series of self-degrading acts of pure evil that will appear over the course of the Trump presidency, and they've been airing tantalizing previews of future episodes. In one clip, Shapely Nudnik bravely travels to an undisclosed elementary school to interview a pedophile teacher who says, quote, I think it's very cruel for people to demonize someone they don't even know with ugly words like pervert and evil scum-sucking hellfiend. I just thank heavens I belong to a teachers union where they support the idea that minor attracted persons can work at an elementary school. After all, that's where the children are, not to mention the unquote. In another clip, Ms. Nudnik scores an interview with former Nazi torture doctor Joseph Mengele, who says, quote, it's true, I used to perform grotesque and unspeakable medical experiments on children, but I've totally reformed, and now I'm supplying kids with gender-affirming care because I've had a lot of practice, and that's what I'm good at, unquote. In other left-wing media news, the Pulitzer Committee has awarded its prize for photography to a picture of a bullet flying at President Trump's head. Committee Chairman Thaddeus Falhart said, quote, we know that other photo of a wounded Trump raising his fist with the American flag in the background is the single most iconic image of the first quarter of the century. But that photo inspired love and admiration for our president, whereas we were rooting for the bullet. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, we are back laughing our way through the insanity of the left. If you are listening on or watching on YouTube or on DailyWire Plus, wherever you are getting this, if it's just coming into the aluminum foil hat you're wearing on your head as you hide in the closet from the alien invasion, just leave a comment, even on your closet wall. And if that comment is hateful and despicable and just violates all the laws of God and man, we will read it here on this show because we're kind of the anti-Vatican. That's what we do here. Today's comment is from Joe N2648, himself obviously an alien. He says, this Trump happiness montage has really got to stop on Easter Sunday when On Easter Sunday, when they played the Hallelujah chorus, my mind immediately went to Klavan show. All right, that's enough. That is enough. We are done with the Trump happiness montage. We cannot destroy people's Easter observances. We don't want to commit blasphemy, and so we're not going to play that anymore. But it has been fun. The joke is over, and it's time. The time has come. The time has also come for you to purchase Kingdom of Cain, Finding God in the Literature of Darkness. It has finally come out. The pre-orders are over. You order it, it comes. It's already #1 in a number of categories. I'll see if I can find out in a brief moment. But it's people are really enjoying it. People are finding it. It's very readable. It's about murder and murder that has been turned into movies and what the movies say about the murder and how that can actually show you how creativity and the arts teach you to live creatively and joyously, even in times of darkness. It's #1 in the philosophy of good and evil, #1 in religious literature criticism, #1 in Christian death and grief, although there's not much grief in it. Anyway, if you would like to buy this, or you've already bought it and would like to buy it for a friend or beloved one, this is the time to do it, because we have the pre-orders in our pocket, and if you put these in, it's really, really, really hard to put a Christian book on the bestseller list. We should take a shot with it. If you want the book, I hope, I'm telling you, you'll love it. If you like the show, you'll love the book. Please go out and order Kingdom of Cain, Finding God in the Literature of Darkness. And now we will get to today's episode, CONKLAVAN. We have a new pope. This is from the conclave, not the conclavan, but from the conclave. We have a new pope, the first American pope since Donald Trump, whose brief reign ended when 69-year-old Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost became Pope Leo XIV. He comes from Chicago, and in keeping with his Chicago roots, he received the votes of 215 of the 133 cardinals at the conclave. Here he is giving his first homily in English.
I'll begin with a word in English, and the rest is in Italian. But I want to repeat the words from the responsorial psalm. I will sing a new song to the Lord because he has done marvels. And indeed, not just with me, but with all of us, my brother cardinals, as we celebrate this morning, I invite you to recognize the marvels that the Lord has done, the blessings that the Lord continues to pour out upon all of us. Through the ministry of Peter, you have called me to carry that cross and to be blessed with that mission. And I know I can rely on each and every one of you to walk with me as we continue as a church, as a community of friends of Jesus, as believers, to announce the good news, to announce the gospel.
So far, he sounds pretty much, from what I'm hearing about him, he sounds pretty much like Pope Francis. He spent most of his work as a bishop in Peru, and then was appointed to the head of the dicastery for bishops. So he was the guy who recommended priests to be made bishops around the world. And I've said this before, but if you're not a Roman Catholic, and I'm not a Roman Catholic, I don't think you can really judge a pope, whether a pope will be good for the Catholic Church, but you can judge him in political terms, in terms of whether he'll make a good world leader, because the pope is also not just the leader of Catholics, but as the leader of Catholics is a world leader. And so conservatives took some hope politically from the fact that the new pope took the name of Leo. Leo XIII was an ardent anti-communist, and they liked the fact that he wore traditional vestments, but he also sounds as if, like Francis, who he followed, that he'll have liberal leanings. He talks about diversity. He likes these synods that a lot of people feel will ultimately lead to women priests and other innovations, a kind of collaborative theology. But personally, I suspect, like Francis, he'll stick to the basic doctrines of the church, and also he will infuriate conservatives by not really understanding anything about how economics works, and not realizing that migration may sound nice, but it actually is destructive to nations. But the thing is, the big thing here, and I haven't heard anybody else say this, but the thing is, the African church, which is very, very conservative, is growing by leaps and bounds. The European churches, especially in places like Germany, where it's very liberal, is essentially dying. And the youth in the American church, which a lot of guys, young men are going into the American church, is turning very conservative. So you have the phenomenon of like boomer priests in American Catholic Church playing the guitar and singing their hippie gospel songs while the congregation is translating the Mass into Latin in their heads. So it may not actually be up to the Pope which way the church turns. Vox populi, vox Dei, which means the voice of the people is the voice of God, and it may be the voice of the people that shapes the church. And in today's final chapter, I'm going to talk about why the Roman Catholic Church matters to me and to the West, not about what the Pope means to Catholics, because I'm not fit to talk about that. And I want to talk about what I want to see from it as a body in the future, as an actor in the world. But today's show, CONKLAVAN, is about something else, because it's not only Pope Francis who has left us and who caused there to be a conclave to choose a successor. Our entire elite class, the popes of the universities and the media and the deep state bureaucracy, those popes have died too, and they've died the death of failure and incompetence and corruption, and they also have to be replaced. And they also are not necessarily the ones who are going to choose their own successors, the vox populi, vox Dei. And so I've called a conclavan in which all the conservative clavans, that's where we get the word conclavan, all the conservative clavans above the age of 612, so basically it's me in a room by myself, we gather in the DailyWire chapel to discuss what the new elite should look like, which brings us to Chapter 1, Pope Hilarious I. Now, you may wonder at my age why I look an actual 150 years younger than my 672-year-old self. Part of it is balance of nature, fruits and veggies. It's the most convenient way to get whole fruits and vegetables daily, especially if you focused on creating a healthier, happier lifestyle. Nature is good at giving us the nutrients we need through our fruits and vegetables. So, Balance of Nature takes fruits and vegetables, they freeze dry them, turn them into a powder, and then put them into a capsule. You take your fruit and veggie capsules every day, and then your body knows what to do with them. Balance of Nature is just one ingredient of a balanced lifestyle. It has no intention of replacing a healthy diet, exercise, sleep, or any other healthy habits. It's intended to be used in concert with other healthy habits. That's how I use it. And you should go to balanceofnature.com and use promo code Klavan for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer, plus get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Klavan. Believe me, it's much cheaper than mummification, but you do have to know how to spell Klavan. It's Klavan. Now, whatever happens to the new Pope, he will never be as great as the last Pope, Pope Donald Trump, who took the name of Pope Hilarious I. He rose to power after a reporter on the White House lawn asked his opinion of the conclave, who he wanted to be the next Pope. This is cut one.
As Pope? Yeah. I'd like to be Pope. No. That would be my number one choice. No, I don't know. I have no preference. I must say we have a cardinal that happens to be out of a place called New York who's very good. So we'll see what happens.
No, the reason I thought the name Pope Hilarious was perfect for him, and this clip was absolutely hilarious, is because it's Trump making fun of himself. You know, it's Trump saying, oh, I'm the kind of guy who thinks he would make a great pope. And he's very self-aware and very self-confident. And then somebody in his social media team put up an AI picture of him as the pope. And we got the usual media, suspects being outraged about this. And Trump shrugged it off. He said, I don't know who did it, but I think it was pretty funny. And he said his wife found it cute. And I think the thing is this, though, and I'm not the first person to say this, but the same people who were outraged at Pope Hilarious's rise to power were not at all outraged about the desecration of everything Catholics and Christians have held dear for 2,000 years when they had that Last Supper drag queen display at the Olympics, when they kill babies in the womb, millions and millions a year. And these same people who are outraged at Pope Hilarious having his picture on social media, that outrages them, but not the deaths of the killings of these babies, sexually butchering children, like I said, like a Nazi doctor with no scientific reason because they think that's going to turn a boy into a girl, teaching children homosexual in elementary school, all on and on and on. So what we're seeing, obviously, is people who are using the emotions of Catholics to continue their work of destroying Christianity, right? That's the ploy, and we all know it. And they all supported Joe Biden, most powerful man in the world. who just supported abortion to the point where he was saying this was, so important that with the horrible, horrible overturning of Roe v. Wade, he would make a federal law supporting abortion. But here's the thing, Vox Populi, Vox Dei, the voice of the people, the voice of God, Biden is out. And here is what's interesting. All the people who were supporting him are out. All the people who are outraged at Trump's joke are out. And Biden is now trying to restore himself as a voice in the country. And so he went on The View, which is one of the central left-wing sources of information because of its complete stupidity and corruption. The left looks at it and thinks, yes, that's what I'm looking for, that kind of stupidity and corruption. And so he was asked about, this is just sad, he was asked about books that are being written by Democrats. I just finished one of them called Fight, that say he had dementia, that depicted him as losing his stuff as things went on. And a lot of these books, the book I read, Fight, sort of showed it happening slowly at the last minute, whereas I think it had happened already as he took office. And so he's trying to describe the situation when he took office, and Jill Biden is sitting right next to him. And this is the end of him trying to describe what happened when he came into office.
We're also in a situation where we found ourselves unable to deal with a lot of just basic issues, and which I won't go into in the interest of time. And so we went to work, and we got it done. And one of the things and Alyssa,
one of the things I think is that the people who wrote those books were not in the White House with us, and they didn't see how hard Joe worked every single day.
So answering the question about whether he's lost his faculties, he can't even finish the answer, and Lady McBiden has to go in for him and finish his sentence for him. So it was actually kind of a disaster. And I want to point out that I would usually play the Trump happiness montage here, but I'm not going to do it. We're done with that, and I certainly don't want to ruin anybody's religious observances anymore. So why, you might ask yourself, why is this poor man being dragged out of his home, or the home where he's being kept, to try and restore his voice in the land? And reporter Mark Helprin, who follows this stuff very closely, was talking to Sean Spicer, and this is his theory, cut 11.
You could say, as we've discussed, Biden's doing this to fight back, or Biden's doing this for his reputation. I talked to someone very familiar with the Bidens, and I think they've pointed out something that I'm going to say now that, to me, is the explanation, or at least part of the explanation, which is Biden Inc. has collapsed. All those Biden grandkids had a lavish lifestyle, which they very much liked. Hunter made hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. Joe, as a former president, is not in a position to get the same kind of paid speeches, corporate boards, book deal. Biden Inc. needs a source of revenue. And Hunter does, even though he was pardoned and he's not going to prison, Hunter does not have great earning capacity.
So if you listen to that, the people spoke. They got rid of Joe Biden. All the people who were attached to Joe Biden, like limpets on a rock, they are now out. And so the people who send these people money, who bought Hunter Biden's paintings for $500,000, they're not doing. There's no reason to do that anymore. And so this crime family that he's been running since, forever. He was always on the take, this guy. So that has disappeared. So the voice of the people is the voice of God, because they basically take you out of the realm where you can supply power and connection for money. That's what he was doing. He was selling connection. He was influence peddling. So, and this is happening. A similar situation is taking place worldwide in a lot of ways. We hardly even covered the fact, I don't think I've mentioned the fact that Klaus Schwab, remember Klaus Schwab, the guy who runs the World Economic Forum, which is where they hold the Davos conferences, he had to step down because he's under investigation for alleged financial and ethical misconduct, and he and his wife, and for allowing sexual misconduct at these Davos conferences. Every year they would have these Davos conferences, and they'd get together and tell us how we were going to eat bugs and we weren't going to own anything and we were going to be happy not owning anything. And he was the king of globalism. Remember, he'd wear those Flash Gordon outfits where he looked like he just landed from outer space, and he was going to tell people of Earth, I'm here to save you. And apparently he was accused of using the World Economic Forum's money for his own luxuries and allowing all kinds of sexual shenanigans. He denies it. We should say he denies it all, but he is under investigation. He did have to step down. And And who would ever have thought that when the great and good gather to tell us how to live into their utopian world, that instead of turning the world into a paradise, they embezzle money and abuse women and descend in perversion? Who could have seen that coming? But I'm just saying that these people are gone. They are being forced out. And as they are forced out, the money that underpinned their power is bleeding away. And the same kind of thing, also the power that underpinned their power is bleeding away. In Germany and in France, they're abandoning democracy because the people want these populists in. They want the Alternative for Germany in. They want Le Pen in France. And they're saying, well, these people are illegitimate or shouldn't be allowed to serve, and they're under house arrest and all this stuff. So they're abandoning everything that they said they were protecting. And in Britain, the invasion by Islamists has gotten to the point where they are now arresting thousands of their own citizens for Facebook posts and for praying silently against the elites, the church of the elite, against the orthodoxies of the elite, like abortion and open immigration and open borders and globalism. Globalism makes the elite rich as long as the voice of the people can be silenced, because it screws the people. So if the voice of the people is the voice of God, it's not going to be silenced forever. Now, the elite has abandoned every principle of Western governance and practice, and they've become intolerant and corrupt and authoritarian, and they find authoritarians under every bed, of course. But something has happened. Something has been exposed about them. And if you want to know what it is, I watched this movie Conclave, just a terrible film. It could have been a good film. You sort of know what film it's supposed to be. It's skullduggery in the Vatican and good priests and bad priests, and they're all, great actors. But Ralph Fiennes is in it. And so a wonderful liberal pope dies. This is the story. And they have to replace him, and Ralph Fiennes is put in charge of the conclave, and he makes this opening speech where he has a written speech, and then he throws away and speaks from the heart, and he starts talking about how diversity is the church's strength. That's what he starts saying, diversity is the church's strength, and then he says this.
And over the course of many years in the service of our mother, the church, let me tell you, there is one sin which I have come to fear above all others. Certainty. Certainty is the great enemy of unity. Certainty is the deadly enemy of tolerance. Even Christ was not certain at the end. Dio mio, perché mi hai abbandonato? He cried out in his agony at the 9th hour on the cross. Our faith is a living thing precisely because it walks hand in hand with doubt.
Now that speech is a lie, but it's like all lies, it's got truth weaving through it. Certainty can be the enemy of faith. We should all be humble in dealing with absolute truth, right? When nobody has we only see darkly as through a glass darkly. We don't see face to face yet. And so we don't know everything. And not only do we not know everything, it takes discernment, it takes wisdom, it takes prayer, it takes study before you can even start to discern any of the truth. So we should all be humble, and we should all allow other people to disagree and all this. And certainty can certainly be an enemy to wisdom. But the rest of the movie is so packed full of small-minded leftist certainties that the only certainty that is disallowed is the certainty of faith in God, of Catholic faith. And that's the heart of our problem right there. The elites who want us to have weak faith in God want us to have absolutely certain faith in them, in climate change, in vaccines, in the miseries of feminism and the wonder of sexual promiscuity and perversion and how bad marriage is and how we have to stay away from God. So that is why we have kicked them out. And while they're out, the money is bleeding away, the electoral power is bleeding away. And so it's time to join the CONKLAVAN and talk about what we are looking for in a new Western elite. So I have been traveling, and I seriously, I haven't slept for days. I mean, I start to lose people's names and things like that. I'm really, really tired because I didn't bring my Beam's Dream powder with me. I should have done that. Beam is proudly founded in America and run by people who share our values, hard work, integrity, and delivering results. It's also a healthy nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. And unlike other sleep aids, there's no next day grogginess, just great restful sleep, because Dream is made with a powerful blend of all natural ingredients: reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. Sometimes a little difficult to say, but easy to drink because it tastes so good. And I appreciate that Beam is an American company, both built and operated here, so a purchase supports hardworking Americans committed to doing things the right way. So here's our deal. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of up to 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code Klavan at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code Klavan for up to 40% off. I know you're thinking, I know how to spell Beam, but how? Please tell me, how do you spell Klavan? It's Klavan. Sleep better, wake up stronger, show up ready for your family, your work, your country, because when you're well rested, you're unstoppable, and we need more people like that. Chapter 2, all the wrong questions. One thing we do, when you fight with the left, when you're constantly criticizing the left, you kind of promote the left. You actually give them, more people see CNN on this program than watching CNN. Nobody is watching CNN. And if you don't have something positive to say, then you don't have anything to build on. We have defeated the forces of the left, but if we don't have anything to build on, they will come back. If all we are is not them, they will come back. And so you have to be careful that you're asking the right questions. To give an example, under Biden, we were invaded by an estimated 12 million illegals. That's an invasion. Why did they do that? Because they don't care about our country, because they believe we should be a global country, they believe the welfare state is more important than our national character, and we're all racists anyway, and they want the votes and all the things. But there's no reason except to maintain their power and keep the welfare state, and they can't answer the question, why is this good for the country? So now Donald Trump and his team are heroically getting rid of these horrible people. They're all illegals, every one of them. I have no sympathy for any of them. I may have sympathy for some of them, but I don't have sympathy for them enough to let them stay. They invaded the country, they got to go. And all you hear about is due process. Where's the due process? And there is, in law, they deserve a little due process. In the law, they deserve a little due process, which is to bring them before a special immigration judge who basically rubber stamps them and they're thrown out. The president can throw out people who are here illegally. So when people say, where's the due process? The right question is, how do you get 12 million invaders out of the country? And every single person who says, where's the due process? Why didn't you have due process? The question should be, how would you get them out? How would you get them out? Because if they can't answer this question, they don't care about the country. They don't care about the things that we're trying to preserve, that all of us should be trying to preserve. So if they can't answer that question, they shouldn't be able to ask a question. We shouldn't even be arguing with them about due process. Listen, I believe in due process. I truly do. And like I said, there's a little due process. But you know what? 12 million people have to go. They've got to go. They've got to be gotten out of the country. How do you do it? That's the right question. And if we're not discussing that question, how are we going to do it? What's the best way to do it? What's the way that's in keeping with our values to do it? It has to be done. Same thing with the universities, right? Harvard, Trump says he wants to strip Harvard of their tax-exempt status. Why? Because they created a student body that hates America, that hates the West, that hates the Jews, that hates anything that's not themselves because of their certainties that are religious certainties without religion. So the president of Harvard, Alan Garber, says, taking our tax exemption is a terrible, terrible thing. Cut 5.
If the government goes through with a plan to revoke our tax-exempt status, it would, number one, be highly illegal unless there is some reasoning that we have not been exposed to that would justify this dramatic move. But tax-exempt status is granted to educational institutions to enable them to successfully carry out their mission of education and for research universities of research. Obviously, that would be severely impaired if we were to lose our tax-exempt status.
So is it against the law? Ira Stoll writes at theeditors.com. And he says, he quotes the law. The law is section 501c3, says no substantial part of the activities of which the tax-exempt institution is carrying on can include propaganda. It cannot participate in or intervene in including the publishing or distributing of statements, any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for public office. If you want to be tax exempt, you got to stay out of specific politics. So then Stoll goes on to point out several of the university's most prominent professors went public last year with anti-Trump views, while there are only one or two pro-Trump Harvard professors, and they're afraid to be found out because they fear there will be retribution. Classes were canceled when Trump won. Programs were held to show Trump was a grave danger, but there were no programs supporting him. First-year Harvard medical students are required to take a course on the principles of advocacy and activism while focusing on a most consequential public health threat, namely climate change. At the educational school, some sections of a required course featured a pyramid of white supremacy. Hell yes, they're propagandists. The right question is not whether it's illegal to take their tax-exempt status away, but the question is, how can we stop them? How can we stop the most prestigious university in the country from churning out students who hate the country? How do we get them to stop turning our privileged intellectuals into intellectuals who hate the West and hate every principle that the West is founded on and the country is founded on? If we can't do that, how can we strip Harvard of their prestige and reputation? Never mind their tax-exempt condition, which should go out the window anyway. How do we prove to people, show people constantly expose to people what they are doing to our children and our elite children? Because our elites are important. There is going to be an elite. There is going to be an elite. It can't be a bunch of idiots. It can't be a bunch of haters. How can we stop them from churning out an elite that hates us? That's the question. If you don't ask the right questions, you don't deserve an answer. That is the big thing. It's not asking him whether it's illegal for us to take his tax-exempt status away. That's not the right question. The question they should be asking Alan Garber is, how do we stop you from ruining our children? How do we stop you from destroying our intellectual life? How do we stop you from poisoning the well of our culture using the prestige of your institution? If you're not asking the right questions, your reporting is illegitimate. If you're teaching children to hate the West and hate your country, your graduates shouldn't be hired. You know, Congressman Ilhan Omar from the state of Jihad was asked on Al Jazeera TV. Well, here it is. Here's a cut of her being interviewed on Al Jazeera TV, cut 6.
A lot of conservatives in particular would say that the rise in Islamophobia is a result not of hate, but of fear, a legitimate fear, they say, of quote-unquote jihadist terrorism, whether it's Fort Hood or San Bernardino or the recent truck attack in New York. What do you say to them?
I would say our country should be more fearful of white men across our country, because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country. We should be profiling, monitoring, and creating policies to fight the radicalization of white men.
She should be censured. She should be censured if that's what she thinks. If she doesn't like white men, because white is not a philosophy. Islam is a philosophy. Islamism is a philosophy. White is not a philosophy. White people disagree about all kinds of things. And this idea that the white people are violent, which is a lie that's been propagated by the left. You know, the House Select Committee working with Kash Patel at the FBI, they released a report showing that the old corrupt FBI, before Kash came in, used false statements, manipulation of known facts, and biased and butchered analysis to support a narrative that shooter James Hodgkinson, the guy who shot up the softball game with the Republicans in it, they said, oh, he was trying to commit by cop without any kind of nexus to domestic terrorism. It wasn't true. They lied. They lied because whenever somebody commits violence with leftist motives, they cover it up, just like they did in Nashville with the transgender person who shot up a Christian school. I want an elite that gets the facts without fear or favor, that doesn't have to lie to protect its elitism, because its elitism is serving the people. That's what the elite are for. You know, in so many ways, I am an elite. You know, I've lived an elite life, but I'm not an elitist. I'm not here for me. You know, I'm not here to write books that nobody understands. I'm not here to speak in tongues. I'm here to speak to you about the things that I know, about the things that my privilege gave me that I can share with you. That is the point of being an elite. And I'm happy, you know what? I'm happy to have some elites that are on the liberal side that I disagree with. I'm happy to have elites, obviously, on the conservative side, but I will not have elites that aren't on the people's side, that aren't on the West side, that aren't on America's side, and they need to be boycotted, undermined, ignored, and essentially canceled, which brings me to the subject of cancel culture. Have you checked your home title lately? Neither have I, and most homeowners never do. But with the growing amount of digital scams targeting property owners, it's more important than ever. With modern technology, criminals have found an alarming way to steal your home equity. They simply forge your signature on a document, add a fake notary stamp, pay a small county fee, and just like that, your home title gets transferred without your knowledge. Once they control your title, they can take out loans against your equity or even sell your property entirely. And the worst part is you might not discover anything's wrong until you receive an unexpected collection notice or foreclosure letter. Don't wait until it's too late. This is the kind of thing you have to do. I try to do it as much as I can. Take a moment right now to verify your home title status and protect what's likely your biggest investment. Use promo code Klavan at HometitleLock.com to make sure your title is still in your name. You'll also get a free title history report, plus a free 14-day trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud should happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Go to HometitleLock.com now. Use promo code Klavan. That's HometitleLock.com. Promo code, how do you spell it?
K-L-A-V-A-N, there are no E's in Klavan.
Chapter 3, Shapiro and Walsh are fighting. Cancel culture is a really interesting and complex subject because while I am completely against any censorship by the government, I'm really against censorship in general because the only people who can censor people are the powerful, and that means that the powerful get to speak and people who are not as powerful don't get to speak. So let everybody speak, but some behavior is unacceptable and should be greeted as if it were unacceptable. Some behavior should get you shunned by people, because it is disgusting, right? The students who stormed the library at Columbia, I think they should be expelled. They broke the law. They broke the rules. They represent something hateful and disgusting. Get rid of them. Ilhan Omar, I think she should be impeached for what she said. People who write books in favor of Stalin and Hitler, they shouldn't be prevented from writing those books. Those books shouldn't be censored, but they should be boycotted. They should be called out. And so there's this argument going on at the Daily Wire, which only goes to prove, by the way, how false it is. People who say that, we don't disagree at the Daily Wire. I've been here the whole 10 years. I've been here every day. And it seems to me that Ben and I like Ben very much as a human being, but we do nothing but argue. We do nothing but disagree. He is never, it's always Ben that they pick on first because he's the top guy, but also because he's Jewish. And then a lot of the people who hate the Daily Wire hate Jews. And, Ben tries to hide the fact that he's Jewish by wearing that yarmulke so people will think he's a Catholic cardinal. But in fact, he is a Jew. I will expose it here today. And the guy has not once. I can remember one time when he came in and forcefully suggested I should say something. And it was kind of a big deal. It was going on and we were all kind of keyed up. And he forcefully suggested I should say something. And I said, Ben, that's not what I believe. And this is what he literally said. He said, oh, well, then don't say it. I mean, there's never been any coercion in this company like that. It's just a lie. So anyway, Walsh and Shapiro, they're fighting over Shiloh Hendricks, right, who obviously was in this viral video. She was in Rochester, Minnesota with her child at a playground, and a Somali kid started robbing the kid or going through his backpack, and she called him the N-word, and she was caught on tape by a guy started filming her. She called him the N-word, and they started saying they were going to prosecute her for this. I don't know what they were going to prosecute her for, but she launched a crowdfunding campaign and called Help Me Protect My Family, and she raised $700,000. So the evil Matt Walsh, and look, I don't have to tell you Matt Walsh is evil, just look at him, but the evil Matt Walsh said that he hoped, he was glad she raised so much money and he hoped she raised more. And he put the whole thing in the context of the fact that our government has wickedly flooded this area with people from Somalia who don't want to assimilate and who have caused crime to skyrocket there and why should they be pumped in? This is the thing. Why is it good for America to have Somalians pumped in at a great rate before they can be assimilated and before anybody necessarily wants them in their neighborhood? So Walsh writes he wanted to enjoy a day at the park with her child at Rochester. She couldn't enjoy it because like so many other cities in Minnesota, Rochester has deliberately imported a lot of third world behavior, put aside whether she's a good person or a bad person or whether she used a bad word. Instead, put what happened in context, okay? So Walsh gets at the fact that that questioning her behavior, using the N-word to, I think, a 5-year-old child, questioning her behavior is the wrong question. And that's a valid point. That is a valid point. It's the wrong question. The question is, why is this place flooded with Somalis. Why did that happen? Why was that good for Rochester, Minnesota? And how did it happen? And who let it happen? And why? Those are the right questions. But Ben Shapiro has an equally valid point. This is the thing. We have arguments, but everybody's so brilliant here that they only make valid points. But Ben has an equally valid point that does not make this woman a guiding light that we want to give our money to. I mean, Ben just said, stop giving your money to bad people. And he has, Benny has that wonderful lawyerly precision. And people were saying, well, they gave a lot of money to Carmelo Anthony, that black kid who was accused of murdering a white kid. And a lot of people started giving him money basically on the basis that he was black. And Ben says, this doesn't justify giving money to a woman who throws a racial slur at a child. And of course Ben is right about this. Of course it doesn't. I'm not giving my money to this, and it doesn't, obviously murdering someone, Carmelo Anthony is accused of doing something far worse than using the N-word. But still, I mean, there are people who need your money. I was going to say online, I'm going to start a fund for good people who do nice things. And so far I've raised $2.15 because nobody's going to dedicate. I can actually claim a little bit of expertise here. I lived in London for many years, and English middle-class children in the neighborhoods I was in are very, very well-behaved, extremely well-behaved, and all the parents are on the same page. They all have the same values. But children from Muslim countries, especially boys, not so much. And they would steal my little boy, Spencer Klavan, no relation, he would be playing, and they would steal his toys. And, they wouldn't take them out of his hand, but they would come and take them and just walk off with them and put them in their bags and all this. And I would go to the mothers and say, excuse me, your child took, it's not a federal crime. Your child took my son's truck or whatever he was playing with. And they wouldn't do anything about it. And I had to go and take the trucks out of the backpack or out of the hands of the child. Now, I never called one of those children, and never would call one of those children any kind of evil word. I never yelled at the mothers. I was always polite to the mothers, but I got my kid's toy back. Obviously, you have to do that. And I don't consider it polite or kind, by the way, to hide the fact or lie about the fact that it was always Muslim kids who did this. And I observed it happening in other playgrounds. It wasn't like one time or two times. I observed it happening over and over again. I talked to other people about it. They confirmed that I was seeing it. It was a cultural difference. And I don't think it's wrong. I think it's right to say the British are in the right. The British values were in the right. And the Islamic values, if that's what they were in the wrong. So I'm with Walsh on the big issue of the absolute irresponsibility of the left in flooding Midwestern towns and cities with people who don't believe in the West. That's not racism. That's common sense, and it is also defense of our values. But I'm with Ben on the fact that I'm not siding with the bigots. I'm not siding with the haters because they can't lead us to the America we want. See, that's not going to happen. Diversity is not our strength. Our great ideas are our strength. Diversity is not our strength, but hatred is our weakness. Our great ideas unite us. Everybody should be free. Everybody should believe in the rule of law and in due process and all of the things that we believe in and in free speech and in free exercise of religion. That's what brings people together. And then you get diversity, and it's a side benefit if everybody is assimilated into our system. If everybody's assimilated in our system, then you get Chinese food, you get Italian food. It's great. You get some new fashions, you get some new ways of looking at things. All that is great as long as they're assimilated to the West, right? And the problem, Matt is right, the problem with cancel culture is that a small group of elites have set the terms of cancellation to serve themselves and their power. And Ben is also right that we will be destroyed just like they have been if we do the same, if we respond by doing the same. The left has used our decency to destroy our decency, and we have to seize our decency back. We don't have to make their hatred our hatred. We don't have to hate them back. We have to show them what decency really looks like. And just like they miscast Trump as an authoritarian so they can be authoritarians, the answer is not for us to become authoritarian. The answer is for us to defend our freedoms. Like I said, there's going to be an elite and there's going to be a cancel culture. There are going to be unacceptable behaviors that should be condemned, but they shouldn't be imposed by a small minority of privileged people who just want to keep their privilege and their certainties about their values. So to achieve this, right, we need to take care of cultural formation. We need to reform a culture that is a good culture. The British, before they opened their borders, had a wonderful culture in terms of good manners, in terms of decency, in terms of simple honesty. They had a wonderful culture for that. Obviously, all cultures have problems, but they were great about that. And so we have to form that culture. And I think in order to reform that culture, we have to face the fact that our culture, every culture, the West's culture, is collapsing into the hollow space where religion used to be. You know, art, James Joyce said that art is the conscience of a culture, but only religion can shape that conscience, which brings us back to our conclavan. Oh boy, this is a new sponsor, and they sent me some of their goods, and they were so good. They were good goods, I have to tell you. You know, I love fish. I love halibut especially. I went to Alaska. I fished for halibut. They don't put up any fight. They're heavy. You just kind of haul them out of the water, and then you eat them, but they are so delicious. But I can't always get to Alaska, and that's where Wild Alaskan Company knocks it out of the park. They deliver the best wild-caught seafood straight to your home. Each portion is perfectly sized in 6-ounce portions and packed with nutrients you won't find in regular store-bought fish. Once you taste the difference, you'll never go back. Their fish is 100% wild-caught, never farmed, which means you're getting pure seafood with no antibiotics, GMOs, or additives. These pristine fish support both healthy oceans and fishing communities while delivering exceptional flavor. Now, they won't send my wife because she cooked the fish and they were just great, but you can probably do it yourself, or if not, find your own wife. Plus, each catch is flash frozen right on the boat to preserve its natural taste, texture, and beneficial omega-3s. When you join Wild Alaskan Company, you're not just getting extraordinary seafood, you're supporting sustainable harvesting practices in Alaska while enjoying flexible deliveries and expert cooking guidance that makes every meal special. Not all fish are the same. Get seafood you can trust. Go to wildalaskan.com/Klavan for $35 off your first box of premium wild-caught seafood. That's wildalaskan.com/Klavan for $35 off your first order. Thanks to Wild Alaskan Company for sponsoring this episode and for sending me that fish. It was really delicious. So get used to being able to spell Klavan. It's Klavan, no E's in Klavan. Final chapter, White Smoke. Now, I would be a fool if I didn't notice that when you start to talk about religion, when you start to talk about God, and when you start to found your arguments on God, a lot of people zone out. This is why I write these books like Kingdom of Cain, to show people that when you're talking about reality, you're almost always talking about God, because in our relationship with reality is a creative act. You know, the world is not this world we see. We see through a glass darkly in everything. Everything we see is different. If God were looking at it, it would look entirely different. All of us would look entirely different. Everything would look entirely different. And we don't see that. We see the world that we see. And that's a religious experience. That is a religious thing. Creation is always an act of creation is always adding on to the work of creation that's done by God. And so you can be moral without religion, but you can't have morality without religion. There's no such thing. There never has been such a thing. There's never been a culture without an underlying religion. And those cultures that lose their underlying religion, as we have been in danger of doing, end, right? There's no science that tells us what is good and what is bad. I've read books where they try to make that argument and they never, ever, ever work. They just don't do it. And science is really important, obviously, and it tells us what's materially true. Unlike AOC, for the rest of us, you have to know the facts before you can get to the morality of it, right? I mean, if for instance, you could actually change somebody from being male to being female, like if you had one of those magic, sci-fi machines and you could walk in and come out a girl, that would change the question of whether people should change their sex. It wouldn't necessarily decide the question, but it would change the nature of the question. You wouldn't just be butchering people like we are now, like some Dr. Frankenstein saying, I'll pull this off and then it'll be a girl, I mean, that wouldn't be happening, and it would be a different question. But you can't settle questions of morality with reason, and you can't do it with science. Something has to be inside your heart that knows the way. And it is formed in an individual person. It is formed in a relationship with God, but in a culture, it's formed by religion, because you need a religion to handle something as large as a culture. And look, here's the thing. We all know this. We get offended by it because the left says it so much, but there is truth to it. Religion can also be small-minded, and it can even be hateful if it depends too much on its orthodoxies, if it has no humility, right? That was the part about what Ray Fiennes was saying in Conclave that I agreed with, that certainty can make you evil. That's the paradox. It can make you cruel, right? And it's the very paradox that Jesus solves in almost all his interactions with people in the Gospels. It is exactly what he's dealing with, because the Pharisees are the guys who have it down. It's all laid out in a law. It's this, you do this, this happens. You do that, that's bad, this is good, this is kind of bad, this is kind of good. They have it all laid out. And listen, Christians can be like this too. They can. It's not, the Jews are always being accused of being legalistic, but Catholics can be legalistic, Protestants can be legalistic. And, when you turn away from the precepts of God, when you turn the precepts of God into these certain absolute borders on human existence, you hem life in with judgmental legalism. Somewhere between the law and anything goes is the way that Jesus goes. And it's like, perfect example. It's one thing to make a theological argument that homosexuality is disordered. You never heard me ever condemn anybody for making that argument. I've never said, that's a hateful thing to say. That's what the left does. I don't think so at all. I understand that argument. I have some issues with it, but I actually do understand it. Men are made for women, women are made for men. We all know it. It is another thing to treat homosexuals with unkindness or disdain or abuse or oppression. That is an entirely different thing. And if you are so certain that you have it right, that is the danger that you fall into. This is, I always go back to Christ standing with the woman who's taken in adultery, because not only is the story itself fascinating, because conservatives have wanted it cut out, literally edited out of the Gospels. There have been serious movements to have it literally edited out of the Gospels because it's not in the earliest manuscripts, but this story dates back to the earliest manuscripts. It's one of the earliest stories, but it wasn't written down right away. But you only have to read it to see that it's Jesus. I mean, it's just his voice. It's just him talking. And the woman is taken in adultery. The law says she should be stoned. Jesus writes in the sand. We don't know what he writes, and then gets up and says to the people, let him who is without sin throw the first stone, and the old people, the old men, go home first, and then the younger men, and then the youngest men, and finally no one is left. And then Jesus says to the woman, and remember, Jesus believed that committing adultery could keep you out of heaven. He tells people, you want eternal life, one of the things you have to do, he says this, is don't commit adultery. And he stands over the woman and says, is there anyone, where are they who would condemn you? Does anyone condemn you? And she says, no. And he says, then neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. And so what's fascinating about this is leftists read this and say how horrifying that he didn't get rid of the law that says you should stone a woman for committing adultery. And conservatives look at it and say, well, if you don't stone her, then everyone will commit adultery. And everybody wants the end to be a rule-based solution. I've talked to Protestants and Catholics, and they all say, well, what Jesus was writing on the ground, and I don't even hear the rest of the sentence because there's always some legalistic thing. He was writing that the law says this, but they were doing that. And you don't know. It doesn't tell you what he was writing on the ground, because there is no rule-based solution. And of course, the liberal heart says, he told her, I don't condemn you. God does not condemn you. And the conservative heart says, go and sin no more, right? But both of those things are true. There is no rule-based solution to morality. The answer is personal formation. You have to become the sort of person who does what is good, who attempts to do what is kind and loving and right, because you also have to be realistic, right? There's no good saying, I'm going to be kind to this criminal and let him out, if he's going to kill more people, right? Kindness to the cruel is cruelty to the kind. You can't do that, but you have to be realistic. But in your realism, you also have to be the sort of person who seeks in the law to find what's right. And this is why Jesus also, the Sabbath was one of the deepest rules of the Jewish people, and he would do good works on the Sabbath, and the Pharisees would say, you're not allowed to do that. And he would say, isn't it better to do good on the Sabbath than evil? The Sabbath, he says, was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The rules are made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The rules. I mean, this is the thing. The rules are made for us. They are made for us, and they're made to shape us, right? And I was on, I'm doing interviews for the book, for Kingdom of Cain, and I was on with Matt Fradd, who does Pints with Aquinas. Just a great guy. He's a wonderful Australian, devoutly Catholic man. And we were talking about the movies, the horror movies and the, murder movies that are in the book. And he said, is it ever wrong to make a horror movie? And I said, yes, there are horror movies that side with the devil, where the torture of women is sexualized so that it's supposed to be exciting. You're not supposed to be afraid. I always tell the story of when I was called in to write a movie, and I said, what's the plot? And they said, the plot is that a woman is kidnapped and tortured. And I went, yeah. And they said, no, that's the plot. And I was like, yeah, I can't write that. I'm not writing that story. That's because I'm rooting for the woman, right? And so and he said, well, how do you know? And I said, you just have to know. You have to be the kind of person who knows when you're watching a woman being tortured for the sexual pleasure of the audience, and you have to not go to that movie or turn that movie off or walk out of that movie. That is the thing, that you just have to be that person. And if you're not that person and somebody points it out to you, you have to become that person. You have to work on it. So how do you do this? How do you do it? It's a dialogue. It's a dialogue between the orthodoxies, the things we absolutely, certainly grasp onto, like do not commit adultery, and the presence of God, the love of God. It's a dialogue. Let me tell you this is one of my favorite true stories. It's an absolutely unbelievable story. St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the greatest Catholic theologians, one of the greatest philosophers ever lived, ranked with Plato and Aristotle. I mean, just an absolutely brilliant, brilliant man. And a great deal of what Catholics believe, even if they don't call themselves Thomists, but they call themselves Augustinians, even if they don't call themselves Catholics, but call themselves Protestants, a great deal of what Christians believe comes from St. Thomas Aquinas. And he codified all this stuff. He wrote a book called the Summa Theologica. I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read a great deal of it. And he just is an absolute comprehensive explanation of Christianity. He was kind of a Ben Shapiro type. He liked to get things right. He liked to put them in order and say point one and point two, and this happens and that happened. And he was a great, great, brilliant person. And he wanted to get it right and give you the rules and tell you how it worked. One day, it's 1273, I think it's around Christmas time, he was saying Mass, and he had a vision, a direct experience of the divine, right? And so picture this kind of Ben Shapiro kind of guy who's kind of getting it right and writing the 900-page book of details of how this works and how this works. And he stops, and he never writes another word. He never writes another word, not another law, not another detail, not another point of theology. And his secretary says, you have to go back to writing. You haven't finished the Summa Theologica. It's your great work. And this is what he said. He said, I adjure you by the living Almighty God and by the faith you have in our order and by the love you bear me, that you never reveal in my lifetime what I'm about to tell you. Everything that I have written seems to me like straw compared to those things that I have seen and which have been revealed to me. He never wrote again, never wrote another word, never wrote another law, never wrote another rule, never explained anything to anybody else because he had seen the divine. He had been saying Mass and he saw the divine. Rituals, the law, Jewish law, Catholic law, Protestant law, all Orthodox religion, it has a purpose. It has a purpose to lead you to that moment when you are in touch with the divine. I go to church every Sunday I can, almost all Sundays, and I try to take communion whenever it's available because that is the center of my belief. Those rituals are of absolute importance to me, and the purpose of following the Ten Commandments and the purpose of following the rules is to put yourself in touch with something that is greater than the rules, greater than the rituals, greater than communion and the law and the orthodoxy. And that, when you have touched that, you return to the law in a new way. And that's why Jesus, the writer of the law, can erase the law by saying only those without sin can enforce the law. He's not saying yes, he's not saying no. He's saying you have to form yourself into a person who can read the law and see the good, because what you're about is the good. You're about it's like looking through a screen that represents something, or watching listening to a parable where all the people in the parable represent something, and now you're getting through to its meaning, and the parable fades away and the meaning becomes part of your heart. To make America great again, you have to make the people great again. And to make the people great again, you have to make yourself great. You have to stop spending all your time criticizing the people you oppose and start spending your time forming yourself and through that living dialogue between your beliefs and the love of God. Look, the Catholic Church is not my church, and so I don't like to speak about it with any kind of authority, but the Catholic Church protects my church, and I think it protects your church as well. If the even if you're not a Catholic, if the orthodoxies of the Catholic Church die, my church will die, because there'll be no one left with that power that the Catholics have to defend it. And so will Rome's. I mean, Rome will become like the German church and just vanish if their orthodoxies disappear. If the orthodoxies disappear, as they have from the Episcopal Church now essentially doesn't even exist. So what I hope from the new Pope, for all of our sakes, I mean, not for the Catholics, is that he keeps to the orthodoxies, that he doesn't try to liberalize them or keep up with the times or change with the times or satisfy the newspapers. He remembers those things that are put in place as ladders to take you to a place where no ritual, where no rule can go, which is to God, who will blow all that stuff to straw by his love, so that you can see through it. It's not like you abandon the orthodoxies, you see through it to the meaning behind it. And so I wish this new Pope well. I hope he preserves the orthodoxies of the conservatives, and he demonstrates the love that the liberals, I think the good liberals, are trying to get at, because it's in the dialogue between those two that great people are formed, and a great people is formed. And then the voice of the people truly becomes the voice of God and can say this:
we're going to win so much. We're going to win at every level. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We're going to win economically. We're going to win with the economy. We're going to win with military. We're going to win with healthcare and for our veterans. We're going to win with every single facet.
Zippity-dee-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. You'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay.
We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
There is nothing more complex, more demanding, or more meaningful than being a parent. This Mother's Day weekend, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson brings that truth to life in Parenting, a new series grounded in decades of clinical insight. Here's the trailer, only on DailyWire Plus.
There is nothing you'll do in life that's more challenging, difficult, and rewarding than being a parent. Nothing with greater highs or lower lows. You have little kids for a very short period of time. It is a major mistake not to notice that and not to appreciate it.
We're dealing with a pattern of misbehaviors with our son, who's 3 years old. Whenever we want to leave the house, he starts running away.
We have to be places at certain times.
When a disciplinary issue arises, you need to make space to master it. I have to not do what I thought I was going to do for 10 minutes to set this right.
Our 13-year-old throws tantrums quite often when he doesn't get his way. We spoiled the heck out of him.
When you spoil a child, so to speak, you take away from them the opportunity to develop their own competence by doing too many things for them. The consequences of his abdication of thought is that other people think for him. That's what'll happen.
Our daughter was bullied at her school.
As this is happening, our son turned to some substance abuse.
Look for mood changes and behavioral changes, and then you can tell your kid, look, it might be an unpleasant conversation that we have to have, but I'm not going to let you be miserable and drift away. Discuss the disciplinary strategies. Discuss the rules. Discuss what it is that you want from your child. Talk that through so that you're the same person. The more effective you are in laying out these disciplinary rules, the more they'll like you. Rules consistently applied with minimal force and plenty of patience. You don't want to let your worry destroy the pleasures of the moment. Just because children know less about the world doesn't mean they're not paying attention, and it certainly doesn't mean that they're stupid. They're not stupid, and they're watching.
Parenting with Dr. Jordan B. Peterson premieres May 25th only on DailyWirePlus.com. Klavan Klapbacks.
Mission Impossible Infinity to Klavan and beyond.
That looks so real. That was really, I'm just happy an old man can run that fast. Klavan Klapbacks is DailyWire.com. Klavan with a K, Klapbacks with a K. Ask us anything you want. We will try to answer it here. We love hearing from you. From Emily, hi, Andrew Klavan. I have seen many of my right-wing friends fall prey to the anti-Jewish narrative going around. I love these people. I think they have been emotionally and mentally vulnerable to the going narrative. I try to push back. However, I don't understand why you have compassion for leftists, but not the right-wing people who are falling prey to anti-Semitism. Thanks, Emily. I don't think that's fair, Emily. I mean, the left I kind of dismiss because all of their philosophy is so wicked that the evil of anti-Semitism simply grows out of it like a plant in its native soil. I have compassion for people, some people who are taken, as you do, for people who are taken away by bad ideas. I have no compassion for the ideas. I have no compassion for the people who are terrorizing Jewish students on school campuses. However, the one thing you might be noticing is that I'm more concerned with the anti-Semites and the Jew haters on the right because I believe the right is right. I believe conservatives are the good guys, and I don't want those guys getting in our way because they will stop us. Ultimately, in America, historically, people reject hatred. Ultimately in America, because they've all been through it. They've all been, ostracized. They've all been demeaned. They've all looked at prejudice. That's who we all are here in America. We all come from somewhere where we were hated. Catholics too, by the way. Nobody took it on the chin like Catholics in some places. And so, that hatred, if that hatred permeates our movement, this movement of freedom, this beautiful movement of American freedom and Western values, if we allow this thing to grow on us like a fungus, it'll destroy the most important movement and the best movement in the country. And that's what I do worry about. So if I'm a little harder on right-wing anti-Semites and Jew haters than I am on the left, is because I dismiss the left entirely. All right. From Peter, Mr. Klavan, my wife and I booked a little trip to celebrate our 10th anniversary along with our 7-month-old first baby boy. When we got there, my wife informed me that she was no longer in love with me and had decided she wants a divorce. She told me I've been a wonderful husband and father the last few years, but she's made a decision that she is sticking to, and nothing I can do will change that. I need help, and I don't have many people I can turn to. Sincerely, Peter. This was an edited letter, went on for a long time. Peter, you're suffering from a tragedy. This is a terrible thing. And a tragedy is painful in two ways. One, it's terribly painful in and of itself. And there's nothing I can do about that. Nothing anybody can do about that. To have your wife leave you, to have your wife not, destroy the family of your child, awful, awful, awful thing. And it's just a terrible thing. And I feel for you, and there's nothing I can do about it. But the other thing about a tragedy is it's a tragedy because there's nothing you can do. And I'm going to take you at your word that you have done everything. You've begged her, you've reasoned with her, you've tried to, turn her mind around, and she has been absolutely adamant that she is not changing. The other way you can make yourself miserable in a tragedy is by not letting go, by thinking you can, bring the dead loved one back to life, by thinking you can repair a marriage that won't be repaired, that thinking you can somehow get out of the prison of this tragedy. And that's not going to happen. And but judging by your own words. And so you have to let it go, and you have to stop. In the letter, you said something like, I'm in a spiral. You get out of your spiral, because now you have a responsibility, which is that child. That child is now everything. That child is your responsibility. You are a man. You have to take that responsibility. And what you have to do is you have to find a place to live. You have to find a way to support yourself. You have to make an orderly, non-drunken, non-drug using life, and make sure that child has a father for the rest of his life and for the rest of his childhood, whether or not your marriage is in place or not. I'm sorry for you, but now it's time to just, eat glass, spit the glass out, and go and do what you have to do, which is raise that child and make sure your life is father-worthy. We are now going into member block with those remarks, and you want to become a member today, go to dailywire.com/subscribe, use code Klavan at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans, or else. They say I shouldn't threaten you, but I do threaten you, because if you don't subscribe, you are doomed to Klavanlessness. Not in 10 minutes from now, but right this minute. Become a member and come to Member Block.